position. Rise up, make that decision. God will provide all your needs. He wants you to succeed. Have faith of a mustard seed. Get up on your feet. Rise up.
Welcome to another segment of the Drexel Seymour Show. Today, I am so happy and delighted to have a special guest. Of course, all guests are special, but I consider this guest a very special guest. About a year ago, actually exactly a year ago, the Turks and Caicos Islands government announced the appointment of our very first female governor, Daniel-Selvaratnam. I hope I have that name correctly stated. And so today, since it's been a year in office as the governor of the Turks and Caicos Islands, I thought it'd be fitting to just have a candid conversation with her to see how things are going, what sort of challenges she's had, some of the achievements she has done, and what we look forward to in the remainder of her term here in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And with that said, I want to take this opportunity to welcome Governor Selvaratnam to the Drexel Seymour Show.
Thank you so much, Drex. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Awesome. So how's it going for you? I mean, it's been a year, but how's it going for you so far?
Good. It's a lot on. It's a full-on posting. It's not certainly quiet, but it's been good. There's a lot of progress that's been made over the year. And obviously there's been a lot of key challenges in respect of what we're dealing with, but it's been a good year. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Before we go into the progress and the challenges, for those who are watching the show, especially those who are not from the Turks and Caicos Islands, because the role of governor may be different in the U.S.
Yes.
What is your role as the governor of the Turks and Caicos Islands?
So my role, the Turks and Caicos Islands is a British overseas territory. And so my role as a governor, as much as it's a UK appointment, my oath is to serve the interests of the Turks and Caicos Islands. That's the oath that I take when I take up my posting. And it is about working in partnership with the elected government in terms of facilitating the requirements of the Turks and Caicos Islands. Within that, I have very specific constitutional responsibilities, mostly around national security, good governance, international relations. But as part of my role, I chair cabinet and do in that role also have a sort of responsibility across in terms of ensuring the good governance or progression in terms of facilitating the government's agenda.
I'm glad you mentioned it, because I think many of us, when you say your role is, more or less allegiance to the people of the Turks and Caicos Islands, yeah. I think many of us are under the impression that your role is for the British government and not that of the Turks and Caicos Islands. So very interesting that you mentioned that.
Yeah, a lot of my role in what I'm doing is a lot of advocacy and actually driving home the point and the requirements of what the Turks and Caicos Islands require with the British government. So it very much is an allegiance in respect of serving the interests here. Obviously, you are appointed by the UK government. They have their mandate, but there is a natural tension in respect of the roles that you have to carry out. But those are my duties in respect of the Turks and Caicos Islands.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for that clarity. You mentioned in your opening remarks there have been some quite achievements. Do you mind sharing what some of the achievements that have been done over the past year?
Yeah, so when I came in, someone will always say to you, well, what have you done? What have you changed? And I always think you shouldn't come into a role to change things for the sake of it. Really, what I wanted to do when I came in was just really, first of all, I wanted to understand the Turks and Caicos Islands, understand the communities. And that's why it's very important to me to get out. And actually, each community is different, each island's different, and actually their vulnerabilities, requirements, or potential differ. So it's only through understanding that can I effectively be a member of cabinet as well, where propositions are being brought forward and you're sitting there going, well, hold on, that's not going to work. I don't know, in South Caicos, or, because you understand what the community requirements are and the differences across. So that was very important to me. But equally, also just understanding where we are in respect of the challenges across each of the institutions that I'm particularly responsible for. Where does there need to be focus in those vulnerabilities? And where I've really driven a lot of focus and attention has been on the criminal justice side and the national security side, and really driving our defence posture. And some of that people may not see, but it's about, if we don't have the foundation stable, then you can't actually do the big and mature the systems of governance. So to give you an example, I think when I came in, you know, we were in an environment where we were having to do heroic policing because of what had come before us. Whereas now we are certainly driving towards much more intelligence-led policing in respect of maturing the model of intelligence, looking at how we're doing proper mapping across in terms of what we're looking at, and also the capability and the experience that we're bringing in.
Okay, so I mean, hopefully we'll reap some benefits from all these.
I think it is now, and you see the confidence in terms of the ownership of the operations and how they're being taken forward, and also the developments in, as I said, in terms of that intelligence-led policing. But in terms of then really driving that forward, we've now got a good foundation from which we're building. And we have also invested in assets which will also help support that in terms of the tools that are needed for them to take that forward.
Absolutely. No, okay, so that's some of the progress you mentioned. Of course, and you mentioned some sort of challenges. But I mean, in your role as governor, I mean, what are some of the greatest challenges that you are experiencing?
Here in the Turks and Caicos Islands?
Yes, in Turks and Caicos.
Do you know, one of the ones that I hadn't necessarily appreciated, but really, we don't have the depth of resilience that we need. So I think we field a lot. You have to do every function of a home civil service, and you are dealing with very acute issues. But across each department, we haven't got that depth of resource where you've got a resilience so that you can field to do what's in front of you, do the strategic, but also have the resilience to then drive further progress. It's all the same people, all the same bench. And I think that vulnerability in our resilience does affect our ability to drive the more strategic work and create the space to look at matters more strategically of where we need to be. And that really is a challenge, because I think there is a lot of acute issues day in, day out that you're dealing with, which you can get pulled into. So for me,
that is true.
It's really, how do I create that space, and how do I create the space for the teams to be there? Because otherwise we're constantly going to be in this reactive environment rather than a proactively owning the context of what we're dealing with. And I see that across all sectors, really. I mean, it's more acute in some, but I think just by the nature of the size of our population and where we are, we just don't have that depth of reach, which I think is a significant challenge.
That is true. I mean, the size, and you have the same people playing multiple roles.
Yes, multiple hats.
Yes, so that is a challenge.
But I think, knowing that, I think we deliver brilliantly in terms of what we're dealing, what we're fielding with. Obviously, there is room for improvement. Obviously, there is sort of huge concern in certain areas, and also I acknowledge huge frustration when you're coming to the delivery of public services and actually, you know, efficiency and effectiveness. And that is part of what we need to do in terms of how do we focus resourcing to tackle that, because actually it then creates a space in those efficiencies and effectiveness of what we're doing.
You're right. So I mean, so how do you think you could overcome that? Do we set up different teams and try to give them different projects to carry out? How you?
I think the thing is, you've always got to be careful about overload and capacity, and also too much change in one go. So a lot of what the Deputy Governor and I have been looking at are, where are the real acute points of frustration or failure in terms of the delivery of services. So let's tackle those. Are we really clear? And I've been talking about during Civil Service Week that we've had just this week. I think people say, well, what do you mean change? What do you mean transforming? And it's not transforming for the sake of transforming. There is a lot, when you look at systems here, if you're doing that sort of workflow mapping, I will always say, well, why are we doing it that way? And I know a lot of civil servants are saying, I don't know why we've done it that way, but we just do it that way.
Because that's how we manage.
Because that's how we're done. And you sit there going, but do you think we could be doing this? Is it producing perverse results? Yes. Could we be doing it more effectively? Yes. How actually think we could be doing this more effectively, and actually empowering that sense of ownership and change. I think that's where we start, because there is a lot of knowledge, but I think the agency to drive that change is perhaps not there. But I think with very little, you could see significant change, and then you can do the bigger projects. But I think if you're building on top of inefficiency, then it is going to be a house of cards in what you're dealing with.
Yeah. I was at the youth forum.
Oh, yes, that was very good, wasn't it? Very inspiring.
Yes,
very
inspiring. Impressed with the young people.
Yeah.
And some of the suggestions they have.
Yes.
And I think some of the suggestions are not really difficult. It's just some simple stuff. And I think even those little small things
will make a significant difference.
It will.
But I think it's how do we give them agency to be able to drive it through?
Yes.
And I think that's the responsibility of leadership.
Yes. Now, a big challenge for us, maybe not in your role, but maybe it is, I don't know, but in our role as residents is the influx of illegal immigrants.
Yeah, that is a challenge for me. It's a shared challenge.
Big
it's
issue
huge.
for us. We don't know what it's like. We don't know what's happening, and I understand, the situation in Haiti.
Yeah.
That as long as Haiti is in the state it's in, it will force their citizens and residents to leave. And of course, we're like the closest place to Haiti. But can you share with the viewers, can you give us some type of hope as to what is being done to address this significant and massive influx of illegals? Yeah,
so a lot of what I have been doing is really driving the trilateral relationship that we have, the Turks and Caicos Islands have, with the Bahamas and the US.
Okay.
So I don't know if you know, you probably do know, we have an OPAT agreement,
yes.
But that's very tightly defined really from a drugs prevention perspective.
Oh, okay.
So we've been doing a lot to widen that approach in terms of joint operations that really recognise actually it's never just drugs. It is also looking at guns, it's human trafficking, and then it is migrant operations as well. So to be honest, through this last year, that has really come on leaps and bounds in terms of the nature of the operations that we are doing, the joint interdictions, but critically, the intelligence sharing of what is going on, early interventions in terms of prevention. We've recently, part of the work that I've been doing is a partnership with the Joint Maritime Security Centre in the UK. And through them, we've got additional radar coverage that is coming in and feeds that really give us a good sense of marine domain awareness, which we're then managing with the US and the Bahamas in terms of that sort of collaborated grip across our waters in respect of that. Part of that success, I don't know if you know, is I was just asking the team where we were. From this time last year, we have reduced the number of migrants interdictions coming down by 60%. So last year,
oh really?
Yeah,
seems like it's more this year.
I know it. No, I didn't realise it was that much. Last year it was something like 4,016 and 32 interdictions. In this last year, it's down to 800 and something with I think 10 interdictions. So it's pretty significant. I mean, that doesn't account for obviously the landings that we've had, how that then is being managed, and that's something that we're certainly looking at. But we're looking at also where are we in developing more of a Coast Guard posture in terms of our resilience with our marine branch, and how do we develop that? But I have to say that we have sort of come on leaps and bounds with that trilateral relationship with the US and the Bahamas. And then I understand today the first of the 200 officers of the Kenyan multi-security group that were going into Haiti arrived of the national force that came in. So I think that's the start of that. In respect of that peacekeeping
from Kenya.
From Kenya, the Kenyan,
Okay. Now, I noticed you mentioned the UK, the US, the Bahamas,
yes,
and Turks and Caicos.
Yes.
So what about
the UK
conversations with Haiti itself?
Yeah. Okay.
Are there any conversations with?
I haven't personally directly been having conversations with Haiti. However, I am working with the UK government, and there are various discussions that are then going on, and certainly through the UN force that have been going in. I know the UK have certainly been advocating on behalf of the TCI in respect of that. So those conversations have been going on with Haiti in that respect.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of people too are wondering, like, when the sloops or the boats, whatever they are intercepted. Mm-hmm. Can you explain to viewers why they have to come to the detention center to be processed? Why can't we just turn around and take them right back to Haiti? Do you understand?
Yeah, tug the boat across.
Yeah. Why do we have to come back here?
It just wouldn't be safe. So I mean, it's not safe in of itself. So what you have is, I'm sure many of your viewers have seen the nature of the sloops and the photos of the boats. So you have quite a lot of people on those sloops. And when they're coming in, there's more stability because they're sort of crouched down. As it's interdicted, they will stand up, which then also creates an inherent safety issue. So it's preservation of life in respect of our ability. So the safest way and the most efficient way is to bring them here, process them, and then send them back.
Oh, I see.
And then also, it's also about managing the safety of our officers and marine units in terms of the time it would then also take in that precarious position where they are outnumbered by the people who may be on that boat as well. So it's very much from a preservation of life, safety and security perspective that we have to follow those procedures.
I understand. Okay, I never thought about the safety. The safety element.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about transporting them by a big boat as opposed to a plane?
So,
is that a safety issue too?
Well, one, we don't have the vessels in terms of those numbers, but it would be, we do the Bahamas because they have the big naval vessels. So we have done it with the Bahamas where they've been on the naval vessels and taken, I think they've done done one repatriation in that way. Oh. But again, it is a safety issue in terms of the numbers involved, the health and safety of them as well as our crews and how that then needs to be managed.
Okay. Well, we'll continue to see what's happening.
It's not easy. I think the issue for us is we are on the front line of Haiti's demise.
Yeah, we are.
But what the work that certainly the Premier and I have been focusing on is really making sure that we're not then the soft underbelly compared to where the Bahamas are and the US are in strengthening their borders from an attraction perspective and pull factor of coming here. So it really has been a lot of effort to strengthen our defence posture in that respect and have that border security.
I remember one time the Bahamas had discontinue flights between Haiti and the Bahamas. I'm not sure. I don't remember why they did it, but I know at one point
they did?
Yeah, at one point they did for a short period of time, Now, of course, we talk about illegals. Now, of course, we have crime.
Yes.
Now, I know you give us a rate of 60%.
In terms of interdictions that have come down, yeah.
Now, I don't know about crime. I think we're probably about 18 murders for the year, I believe, so far.
Yeah,
I don't remember the count.
So.
About 18, 19. That's a big issue for us, and I know that national security is under your portfolio.
Yes.
Of course, under the government as well, because they do the funding.
Yeah.
And I know that the crime is more than just the police. I think it's to a certain extent, it's all of us involved. What do you think needs to be done, or what more needs to be done to help alleviate this crime that is taking place? Do you think we're doing enough? What more? What we need to do?
It's really tough. It's really tough because I think the nature of what we're seeing is unprecedented, and particularly for the nature of our islands and how it's operating, what our population is. There's no one solution to it. I think that's the difficulty of it. So I think from a policing standpoint, and I would say, I think from where the police were to where they are now, there really has been a step change. There's more to go in respect of that. But the model of policing that we've invested in over the years was not to deal with this type of criminality or these levels of criminality. So you've got a police force that very quickly had to move into heroic policing, really, to be able to deal with it without then that resilience to then, you know, get out there. Because, you know, we've got to do it on all fronts of, you've got the migrant activity that needs to be dealt with in the joint operations. You've then got the tactical operations with the sort of criminality aspects and the gangs. You've then got the community policing that we need to have, in addition to all the other, you know, aspects of policing. So it's also then a very small number of police force that you're then dealing with to do that spread of activity in different directions. So that's where we're really trying to build their resilience and resource them appropriately. But what I would say is, I think moving to a more intelligence-led policing model, which is what we're heavily investing in, is one part of it. I think we've got to do a lot around the prevent agenda.
Yes.
As well.
That's the key.
That is key. And I think, you know, I've said it before, you know, children want, these youth want, our youth want purpose, right? They want purpose, they want position. And an element of quick cash as well. So how are we creating pathways to responsible citizenship, but also in a manner that's accessible to them, or that gives them the confidence to either know what their options are, how to navigate those options, or even to go for those options, or to have that belief of what they're dealing with. But I think there's a lot around prevent. I think there's also a lot around safeguarding that we need to deal with. I think there's an environment, particularly for young girls, that they're growing up in, that for me raises significant issues from a safeguarding perspective. And I think you're then conditioning very young people. So actually their ability to then be responsible citizens with that either level of trauma, or in an environment where most things seem permissive, or the boundaries of right or wrong or citizenship aren't clear, then we're just adding to that stockpile on slippery slope into further criminality. So there is a real focus. I think I've been, the Minister of Education really has been quite tenacious on her efforts in this front. But I think that's where, when we, and I know it's difficult for the community, because there is a lot of, there's two aspects of it. There's, everyone's just dealing with their day-to-day, right? You know, and you know, people have multiple jobs, they've got multiple things, you know, aspects, they're being pulled in different directions. So it's difficult to then have that community environment where the community is a driving force behind it. There's obviously stigma. So it's, how are we self-perpetuating a sense of stigma and isolation? And if we're isolating people, if they are seeing inequity, then that probably is going to result in resentment. And therefore, it's not necessarily going to result in productive members of our community. And then the other part of it is, there's a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of knowledge amongst our communities about what might be going on, who's involved in various issues, but the trust and confidence to come forward with that information is hard, because I think they'll be worrying about their own safety. You know, so that,
not cutting you short, but not worrying about their own safety. A lot of people in the community they don't trust the police.
No, they
feel that if they report the incidents, they have the knowledge, they tell the police, they feel that as soon as they report the incident, the police will call the relevant person. And
I've been told,
and so that's a big issue.
It is. I mean, it's something that I spoke to the Commissioner of Police about when he was coming in respect of trust and confidence in the police, and that actually there is a considerable rehabilitation that we have to do in the minds of the community, but also the police themselves, and just down to how do they conduct themselves on a day-to-day basis, what is the responsiveness, and actually if information is given, how is it then treated? Because if there's no, as I say, if there's no trust around that, then we can't begin to start tackling these issues, because we do need the community. But I think, you know, I can quite understand the community will say to me, well, you always then put it back on the community, and it's not about the community, it's about the police, and it's about grip. And it's a fair point. It really is a fair point. But if we are to move to that sort of intelligence-led policing, to do the prevention and to really be able to intercept and get ahead of it, then we do need the information that's there, because actually then it leaves little room for people to hide.
Yeah. I mean, it also seems that we have well, based on from where I sit, it's like we have a difficult time when cases are will come to the judicial system, or go to court. We're unable to resolve those cases. I mean, has there been any discussion about a mandatory fingerprinting? I know twice, I think this came up. There were some people in the community who were against it, and somehow it didn't go any further. Has there been any discussion about fingerprinting?
There has, so two aspects to it. In terms of migrant landings and coming in, we do fingerprinting, and we do fingerprinting, but at the moment it's a very manual process. But we're trying, and this is part of our relationship in terms of the trilateral, looking at more biometrics, so that it can go automatically in a database and we can profile who's coming. So that's part of the work that we're trying to work towards, and that's a good plank of what Border Force are taking forward in terms of our border security arrangements. So it's in terms of that, it's not just about creating immigration and customs together. It is, what are the foundations of a border force? How are we then effectively knowing who's coming in and out at any one time? How is that then being managed from a sort of management of identity perspective? But obviously there's sort of considerable legal issues and frameworks that need to be managed and around that, but that is being worked on.
Okay.
But from a policing standpoint, I think they do fingerprinting when people are arrested and charged. But again, I think it's about, how is that information kept? Are we using modern systems that enable that database to be there so that it can then be taken forward? But the offender management side is being looked at. And then even from a probation side, we've made great strides with Jaron Harvey, who's leading up the probation and social services to really drive our offender management strategy.
Okay. Well, I mean, that sounds like a lot of progress in that.
It's progress.
In that
I think
field.
the difficulty is it takes time to get it in place.
Yeah.
So I can completely understand from a public confidence perspective, they're not seeing tangible outcomes yet.
Right.
But from my perspective, it's important that we invest in those foundational planks in order to be able to drive those outcomes.
Okay, I want to ask you this question. I mean, you know, we've had, you recently appointed the Commissioner of Police.
Yes.
We've had quite a number of Commissioner of Police. And the recent appointment, the community was not happy with that appointment. They were very concerned that, I say you because I understand.
Yeah, no, it's my appointment.
Right, that you appointed someone who is more or less retired. Or, I mean, and rather than, and there was even concern that, you know, why do we have to bring in an outsider? Why can't we find a local person to head the police department? What do you say about those comments?
I can understand them. I definitely can understand them. I mean, one, in terms of someone who's retired, he's in his mid-50s.
He's in his 50s?
Yeah, he's in his 50s.
Oh, okay.
So he's
You're
not.
Retired,
I think there are members of the executive who may be older. I'd have to check that, but there might be members of the executive who are older than him. But so he's in his 50s.
Okay.
But look, we have a significant crime problem here, and I need to preserve life. So that is what I'm led by. And so the Commissioner brought with him a wealth of experience in respect of dealing with this type of crime. That is his background. And not only from his time in Grenada, but also regionally, he is very well respected in respect of the nature of this sort of organised crime that we're dealing with, transnational crime, and has also done a significant round to work with sort of Caribbean regional groups, and has a very good reputation both with them and others. So when you've got someone who's got that depth of experience to bring to bear in what we're dealing with, it's not about to me, it's not about a question of local or not local. It's about who is the best equipped to deal with the challenge in front of us, given that the stakes are so high in that this is about life.
Okay.
And I'm not going to take a chance on that.
Okay. All right. I understand your perspective on that.
But I mean, what I would say is it's also about making sure that we're developing the talent. And I know this is always said there's an outside appointment and they'll say, oh, but for me, I think it's also about how do we get, and I previously said, we've had a model of policing over the last 30 years, which was to a very different crime model.
Yes.
To create our future leaders. Yes, they're getting a depth of experience here, but what I've talked to the Commissioner about, but also my other governors as well, is because they have the same issue. How do we get them to have a wider depth of experience to then bring to bear, and that sort of sense of you've got to go out to go up? And could we do more in terms of secondments to different and swaps with different, particularly the Caribbean overseas territories, so that they're in different environments dealing with different forms of leadership, different types of crime, to then come back with that experience to bear. So I think we've got to be more intentional in developing that pipeline, identifying our future leaders, developing that sort of program of experience so that they are able to compete effectively for these positions.
Yeah, I think the secondment is a very good idea. I not only in the police department,
but I think across, I think the Deputy Governor and I have certainly talked about, because I was saying to her when I first came in last year, I said, okay, who is your next generation of perm sex and leaders? How are we identifying them, and how are we then going to drive that talent program? And actually, let's look at what those opportunities might be. But in that way, being part of the British Overseas Territories is a good thing, because actually that's a very easy secondment swap opportunity to be able to get in terms of a cadre of expertise. So that's certainly something that the Deputy Governor and I are looking at, but very much so also on the policing side. Right. Okay.
Well, let's talk about your role as the chair of the cabinet.
Sure.
Tell us, how does that work? On the outside, based on my understanding, is that everybody has to agree, and there must be a consensus. And consensus means everybody agree.
No, it's a consensus. It doesn't mean every single person has to agree.
So tell us about that.
Yeah. So cabinet works. Well, you've got it's a modern partnership. Right. So in cabinet, I am very conscious that I am sitting with democratically elected leaders driving a government agenda. And so my role in cabinet with the Premier, and it's very consultative in that respect, is to set the agenda for cabinet in respect of the papers.
So you co-chair?
I chair.
Oh, you chair.
I chair, but I think it's also about a respect for the Premier and his role in respect of the delivery of business, right? So there will be an agenda that's brought forward. We will go through the papers. It might be that papers, if there's further work needed, or that things are missing in terms of issues that have not been looked at, or we need further legal advice, it might be that we might defer it to get what's needed in it, or we Premier will discuss it and say, okay, let's consider it in principle to just get a steer, and then we'll take it forward. So it's very much, it's a collaborative effort. Within that, there will be very diverse viewpoints on issues, and everyone is heard in that respect. If I have concerns, mostly if it's from a governance perspective, or the AG will certainly come forward in terms of legal issues, legal implications. The DG herself also, particularly from a finance or governance side of it, and ultimately it is also about making decisions on risk. Right. But you have to, my role is very much making sure that is everything understood? Are the full implications of this understood? Yes, we could take this initiative forward in this way, but these are the risks of doing it in this way. Actually, if this is the outcome, though, that we want to achieve, is there another way that we could go about it that could mitigate that risk? But the main thing is making sure that ultimately in cabinet, all of that is understood as the decision is being made.
Okay. So you mentioned consensus.
Yeah.
So consensus means that what?
consensus means that there is a majority view in respect of it, and all issues have been put forward and discussed through. So if there are concerns, all of that will be discussed through and worked through with each other, but then a decision will be made as to which way to go with whatever the recommendations are that are put forward.
Because my understanding from consensus is that, say there's like the 8 ministers?
Yeah.
8 ministers and the governor.
Yeah.
And say like...
and then the AG and the deputy governor.
Right, but do they vote, the AG? Oh, there's no voting, I know.
We don't literally say, do you say yes,
Right.
do you say no? What we'll say is everyone in agreement? Are there issues? People might then say, well, no, I don't agree with this. We'll talk through what those issues are, and then we'll decide, is it going forward?
So 5 people agree?
5 people agree, yeah.
Then can it move forward?
It will be discussed, because the thing is, you won't, it would never be in a position where one person can hold a decision hostage. That's not effective. But what you do need to do is, if people have a concern, we need to understand what that concern is. It might then mean that the way forward isn't strictly how it's suggested in the paper, but actually that concern is recognised and accommodated, or it's talked through and gone, actually, I'm no longer concerned.
Okay, so it has to be addressed, and once you
addressed, or it might be that we'll say, these are the things that you are making. Are you acknowledging and owning the risk?
Okay.
In respect of these issues, and is that fully understood?
Okay.
If we were to. So it's much more, that's where it's about consensus, because it's about discussing all those issues through. It's not just about, well, here it is, do you agree or disagree? And that's the nature of cabinet discussions.
Got it. All right. Okay, thanks for that clarity. Now, the civil servants, they report to the deputy governor, who in turn report to you.
Yes.
Now, a lot of you, can you explain to the people, because a lot of people sometimes, they blame the politicians.
Yes.
And I see even people campaigning now, talking about creation of jobs and all that stuff. And I know that they could put the jobs and stuff in the budget. They create jobs by saying these are the positions we want.
Who's the politicians or the...
Politicians, right?
Okay.
Right, they put, right. But when it comes to the hiring, it's not the politician, right?
Civil servant jobs.
Right, civil servant jobs.
I wouldn't say that's strictly true in terms of a process. No. So what I would say is, look, we have, there is a strict workforce ratios that we need to maintain in terms of budget and headcount across the whole of the civil service. So it's not as if...
you mean a percentage of the budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have workforce ratios. So it's not as if unlimited jobs can be created, right? And then any jobs that are created are clearly go through a process in terms of, it probably might start with the permanent secretary and the minister in their areas looking at what their requirements are, where there is, so for example, with the creation of Border Force, there was a need to also then create the Director General post of Border Force if it was to have that sort of dedicated leadership. So that's how a process of those job. So it's not just...
We're going to create these jobs.
No.
Okay, but then how does the actual process work? So when we actually hire you?
So then the job will be advertised, and then so the ministers are not involved in public sector appointments.
They're not.
They're not. What they might advise on is they might opine in respect of the nature of the roles that are required, and agree that, obviously, because they need to agree to the funding in respect of the roles being created. But then it's very much down to the permanent secretary of whichever department taking forward the recruitment process to get that person in.
And then they have a public service commission?
And it goes to the Public Service Commission. The slight difference to that is roles that I'm appointing, where I might, depending on what the roles are, I either have a requirement to consult with the Premier and sometimes certain posts with the Leader of the Opposition, or as a courtesy, I might just inform the Premier in terms of who I'm thinking of appointing and the process I've gone through, because I think that's just a courteous thing to do.
And those roles, basically, you're basically responsible for the police, Commissioner of Police. Commissioner of Police,
Director of Public Prosecutions. What else am I responsible for?
Is it the PS of Finance as well?
PS of Finance, but that would be with the Deputy Governor. What else?
And the Deputy Governor.
Deputy Governor, of course. And then various board appointments. So I've just reinvigorated the Financial Services Commission board with appointments there. So there, and then obviously the Boundaries Commission that came in, and then what else? Integrity Commission. So there are various board appointments as well, which is what I talked to you about. The sort of some of them are in consultation, some of them are not.
Right. Now, speaking about Financial Services Commission Board,
of course.
It seems to me as we have a difficult time finding locals. When I say locals, not necessarily Turks and Caicos Islands, people that reside here. Because the past couple of boards, it's like there's only one or two persons from Turks and Caicos on that board. Why is that like that?
I don't know. And I really wanted to reinvigorate the board. I think because there is such potential there. And so I was really, board appointments were coming up, but I really wanted a keen focus in respect of a real sort of tenacious drive on the board and actually taking the Financial Service Commission forward. So I advertised for the posts.
Yeah, I saw that.
So I did an expressions of interest, and it was interesting. I mean, we had more interest from overseas than we did from the Turks and Caicos Islands. We had some from TCI. I think some of them the difficulty is they couldn't be considered because of conflicts in terms of, the difficulty is you want people competent in the field of financial services. Yeah. But also they cannot be
because they also
in an environment where they could be regulated. So for me, that limits the pool.
It does.
In a sense. But I was quite proactive with the office in really trying to reach out. And I said, well, come on, there must be Turks and Caicos Islands people who've gone to London or elsewhere, so have a vested interest here, but have financial services, but they're not in this sector here. Right. So through that, we were able to get some good appointments as well. Okay. Yeah.
So you'll announce that soon?
I think I've announced them already. So I had 3 that were announced. So the 3 that were announced were Jeff Scott, who is from currently this chair, I think, of the Bermuda's Bankers Association. Then Dennis Swan, who'd previously been at the FSE, and then DiMaggio Rigby, who's in IT tech, but at Financial Institute in London, and sort of coming back. So really good experience there.
All right, that's good. That's good. So what keeps you up at night, Governor?
Crime.
Crime?
Crime keeps me up at night, just because I think the difficulty is it's just the proximity of it.
Yeah.
The proximity of it. And if you look at particularly at Saturday's murder, where it was on the steps of the community centre. And for me, really, the safeguarding, I'm really worried about, given this proximity, I think it's really difficult, I think, for our youth. They will think they're making savvy choices. For themselves, and I know it's very attractive to talk about thug life and get caught up in an environment where I don't think they see it as gang activity, or that they're on the but they are on the fringes of it without necessarily realizing it, and then it will be so devastating in terms of such talent, such potential. So that for me, it really does keep me up at night, because there's no quick fix to it. But that is our future in terms of that's what we need to harness in terms of amazing talent. And you were at the Youth Forum. I think the previous Saturday I'd been at the Ripple Effect movie, and that there is amazing talent that we have, and it's how do we create opportunities to harness that talent here. And also get their confidence and drive their ambition. So that's what keeps me up at night, because I feel there is a weight of responsibility in terms of tackling that. So it's just how do we go about that, and how do we be intentional in respect of those interventions?
That keeps a lot of us up. You just don't know. You may not be a target. You might just be in the area, and something may happen. It's just a concern. There's a lot of our young men being killed, and a lot of our young men being murdered. And it's like we're losing a generation.
Exactly. I think that's the point. We are losing a generation, and we've got to be able to put in some interventions to help prevent that. But it's tough. It's really tough. And I think if they feel they're in this permissive environment without realizing where those boundaries are taking them, then I think it's really difficult. So that really does keep me up at night.
We're almost over with the interview, but I just want to ask you about the British, right? Because a lot of people, because of course it's a collaborative effort.
Yes.
But a lot of people believe that the British government can do more by even having, for example, the illegal immigrants, by even having some ships to deter people from coming, by helping us out with the crime. I think you guys are invested in some assets you mentioned earlier. But a lot of us believe that more can be done in terms of the visibility of something from the UK, especially when it comes to tackling the illegal sloops that are coming here.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. So a lot of what I've been doing is really trying to work with the UK to get that operational response. And very much, certainly the Premier and I in our representations, we don't need funding for kit. We need operational boots on the ground and that resilience that I'm talking about. And so I think we're way beyond where, pointing to, well, we've funded whatever kit for the police, or we've got that. We're beyond that.
Yeah, we could fund that ourselves.
That's not the issue. Much more substantively, it is about boots on the ground. It is about operational response and resilience. And also, it's also about our relationships with our partners internationally here, because we've also got to be able to hold our own as part of this collaborative effort. But we, with what we've got, cannot do that unless the UK recognise their responsibilities in respect of that. So that, it has been good to be able to get 3 UK ministerial visits out here, and really
during your year here.
During my year here, I think the thing is, because I think otherwise it's always looked at as sort of not quite theoretical, but I was really keen that they saw in situ,
like how you visited different islands.
Yes, it's just you've got to understand the context, and I think from that ministerially they got it, and they were really taken aback. I think in terms of really respected actually how we were responding, that we were dealing with. But also could see we were at the limits in respect of what we were doing. But it's then the follow through of then that tangible response that we need to drive home with them. So that is part of the efforts in respect of what we're doing with the UK to actually get that operational response to support us and build that resilience.
I also want to talk about the illegal housing. I know that the government has, created
the ISU,
informal settlement unit. But it seems like, and I know I had Mr. Collins on the show at least twice.
Oh, you have? Okay.
I did. But it seems like it's moving so slowly. Do you know any updates on what's happening? Are we seeing any evidence of some of these illegal illegal homes being demolished?
There has been some effort. I think the thing is, it's multi-layered in what you're dealing with, because when you go into Dockyard, it's and I've been I've been a number of times into the Dockyard. It is a community.
Yeah, I've never been there.
You've not been?
No.
Oh, you can come with me next time.
I may take you up on that. Yes.
No, do. I think, to be honest, I think they are communities. And so I think there is a sort of potential sort of sense of what it is and what it isn't, right? But in there, as much as you're dealing with, they're sort of illegal migrants, you've also got everyday workers living there. You've got a lot of hotel workers living there. You've got people who've got because that's, from a housing perspective, that's the only place they can afford. And you've got sort of regular housing intermixed with irregular housing. There's a whole load of health and safety issues. There's just lots of different issues that need to be dealt with. So we can't, what the team have been doing is they've basically been profiling it and working out who is where and what are the housing? Are there young children in there? Because also what we've got to deal with is a displacement. Because if you don't understand what you're displacing and what the channels are to then deal with that, then you're just creating the problem elsewhere. So it's not something that can move very quickly.
Not overnight.
Not overnight. But that said, we've now got a group from Trinidad who are specialists in this field. I forget what they're called. I met with them this week or last week. Okay. So it's a whole team who are urban planning, quality surveyors, legal, all sorts of
and they'll be part of the ISU.
So they are working with the ISU and the National Security Secretariat to basically build the action plan of action to take it forward, because you'll need to come at it from all those different, and then again, there'll be safeguarding issues and other issues, but it's critical that we deal with it from a displacement perspective, not just a demolish perspective.
I understand that part, but my only concern
is... It's frustrating though, It is, yeah.
The thing is, I don't want it to grow.
No, I know.
Because if we don't do any... Because, okay, we have what it is now. But if we don't seem to be seen as doing something, then more homes will be built. So we can prevent new informal settlements. I think that in itself will help.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the focus, but I think it has to be approached with such care and consideration, and also there are the legalities in respect of the management of that move. But that is, and this firm that have come in to support that work is part of the efforts to build that strength of team that can then take that forward. Okay. So there is more to come on that, certainly, and it is being great.
That's good.
Yeah.
And my final question, there's rumors that you're not processing any BOTC.
Yes. That's not true.
Oh, you heard the rumor?
Yes, I've heard the rumor. There's a rumor that I'm not processing BOTC or nationality files at all.
Right.
So I can categorically say that is not the case. There is a backlog of cases. I have met with the Minister, the Permanent Secretary and the Deputy Permanent Secretary. There is a backlog of cases within the team. They are processing them through. So the Permanent Secretary and Deputy Permanent Secretary are working through. So as soon as the case files are received, in respect of my office, I am going through them and I'm signing them off, but there has been a backlog, but that is being tackled.
Oh, okay. Well,
but I know it's very easy to just say it's the governor. So I will take it. But what I would say is I have looked into what the actual issue is, and that is being gripped and tackled.
Okay, well, that's good to know. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you very much for being on the Turks
thank you. It's been really good to spend time talking things through with you. I can't believe it's been a year already. It's gone really, really quickly.
Right?
Yeah, there's been a lot, but really good. And it's been, I mean, the main thing is the thing that's really brought joy is getting out and seeing all the different communities and getting across the island. So it's been a good year from that respect.
Thank you. You have anything else you want to add?
No, I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Drex.
Well, thank you, and enjoy the start of your second year.
Thank you very much.
Turks and Caicos, and I wish you the best.
I look forward to coming back.
Of course. Definitely.
Great.
We'll be back.
Okay.
All right.
For sure. Thank you. Bye.
You've been watching the Drexel Senior Show. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Turks and Caicos Crossroads. It's been a bit of a break, but we are back And today I'd like to welcome Larry Lamar Garland to our studio, aspiring entrepreneur who is going to tell us about some of the ventures he's interested in, some of the research he's done, and we're very happy to welcome here Larry in our studio. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you.
We've had quite a few Garlands on the show. Any relations to you? We've had here Sandra Garland and her daughter. Is that, I guess, somewhere there's a relationship, right?
Yes, there is a cousin relationship between us there.
Okay.
Yes.
I think to begin with, Larry, before we get on to the venture that you're currently interested in, we're also going to chat about your work in tourism and in the as an air traffic controller. I'd like to perhaps start off with a brief biographical sketch. That is, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, childhood, where you grew up, the school you went to, etc.
Certainly. I was born in Grand Turk, the capital of the islands, raised in South Caicos, and I migrated over here to Providenciales in 1989. However, throughout my experiences in South Caicos, I basically had started my career, manhood that is, in terms of working with an airline charter company.
Are alive with the sound of music.
Work experience around the aviation aspects of engineering, also office administration, after which I became employed by the Turks and Caicos Islands government Civil Aviation Department as an air traffic controller assistant. However, as an assistant, I did work independently as well as under supervision by other air traffic controllers. When you identify that in perspective, everything led on to other areas in terms of recognizing that job itself being a job that was quite challenging, which I might say I still look at as being challenging.
The air traffic control.
Yes. However, when you identify in terms of other areas, as you had just mentioned, being an aspiring entrepreneur, it was my desire from at that stage in time to focus on an area whereby I can become not specifically dependent on any other person or any other entity as such, but more self-dependency in terms of being able to take things on my own.
Let me go back a step for 1 second.
Sure.
You said you were born in South Caicos and you grew up in Grand Turk, right?
Actually born in Grand Turk.
Sorry.
Yes.
Born in Grand Turk, grew up in South Caicos.
Yes.
At that time, the tourism, of course, was far less developed in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And when you were growing up, later on started your first work with the Civil Aviation Department, did you already have some kind of a notion that Providenciales was going to be the island taking off and that eventually you probably would have to move there?
While employed as an air traffic controller, I recognize that when you identify in terms of areas of growth, Providenciales at that time had a bank whereby it was open open 5 days a week, as well as with Grand Turk, right? This was Barclays Bank. Through this factor, recognizing a bank of that nature, I think any entity or any community that has as such institution that provides various different services, you will recognize that there is a thought prospect that something will take place, right? Because I think when you identify the areas that was in growth at the time, me being a studious person, right, working at advanced level accounting at the time, sure review, I realized that the idea in terms of me being able to function within another area in terms of being able to utilize my newly refound knowledge was merely aimed at going someplace where there was entities as such that can enhance my intellect.
So from air traffic control, you went on to accountancy?
Somewhat.
Yeah.
While coming over here, I was in areas of management in terms of working as a lab assistant at the Caicos farm. And thereafter, I moved on to a small firm, which is called Business Accounting Services, where I did a short internship there, after which I moved into management training with Ramada International.
With Ramada?
Yes.
Yeah. We'll move on to accountancy and tourism in a very short while. For those who are not as experienced in air traffic control, I'd like to perhaps just touch on that for one more minute. Needless to say, here in the Turks and Caicos, we don't have the sort of traffic that you get in Miami or in New York or places like that. But still, you're in a relatively small space. You're responsible for making sure that planes land and take off in a safe manner. Was that stressful at times?
Well, to be honest with you, right, I think in any job area there's stress, right? However, the important thing that I've noted about stress is that what my instructors normally told me that stress is good for you, right? Why? It keeps you thinking. It keeps you mentally alert. And by being mentally alert, you can focus in terms of being able to relate to many different situations at a given time. What I am saying is that you'll be able to function on many different areas simultaneously.
Ever a situation while you were working in air traffic control where things got a little iffy, where you thought, oh gosh, this is, you know...
Well, I think recalling from my experiential background in ATC, right, I think we should know that an air traffic controller is responsible for the safety, orderly, expeditious, and efficient flow of air traffic control, right? But when you identify basically your question and thought, I recall just before vacating air traffic control that there was a near miss just over the Grand Turk TCA, which was in the Miami terminal management area, the FIR. And what happened is that there was a power failure in Grand Turk. Grand Turk is where the approach sector was located. When I say approach sector, they control the airspace within the confines of the Turks and Caicos Islands, right? Which is basically surface to 6,000 feet AMSL, which is above mean sea level, which when you identify that just based on barometric pressure readings.
Right.
However, I think what had happened when the power failed, the voice link, which is the hotline connected to Miami Air Traffic Control Center, it had failed as well in Grand Turk. So this was all due to the fact of the power failure, which caused communication, relay systems, and everything to be suspended for a period of time. Due to this factor, while in South Caicos, it was evident by myself while working at tower, realizing the situation as occurred, the emergency that took place. I had advised Miami of the power failure, and I was interested in knowing if I could have assisted in any way. So the radar controller explained to me that he had two aircraft opposite direction at 31,000 feet, which was losing separation. Now, when you identify two aircraft, say opposite direction, the manner of impact, it's based on the combination of two speeds. Because when you take consideration 727 at 31,000 feet, probably doing about 440 to 460 knots, right? At Airbus 300 opposite direction. It's basically you find that both of them may be doing the same speed. So the rate of closure, right, may come to a fact, well, it may be much more in terms of speed factor versus it just coming from another direction, right? When this happened, after the air control confirmed with me that he had these aircraft on radar and he needed clearance to be passed, right? Immediately, I passed the clearance. On passing the clearance, I called the air traffic controller back, and he said he had the aircraft descending to flight level 290 at the time, which was based on his clearance, right? That descent was a clear picture in mind that, it was a point where a lot of people were saved, right? Now, I take that thought that, as an air traffic controller, it's your responsibility to provide a safe and orderly, as I was saying, expeditious and efficient flow of air traffic services, right?
When you say near miss, you said that earlier on.
Yes.
What sort of distance to the layperson were we talking about with these two aircraft?
Okay, their separation was probably, say, within about 17 to 20 minutes prior to impact.
Okay.
Yes.
So they had, luckily someone came in, they had sufficient time to correct the situation.
Yes, actually, when you identify it, right, looking in terms of separation minimums, they had not quite reached the separation minimum at the time, right? However, you should always anticipate where you have a buffer, right? The buffer identifies that if there is a situation of that nature comes about, you would have adequate preparation so that before they reach the minimum requirement, they would somewhat be cautioned, not just cautioned, but they would be taken the thought of where the separation is achieved prior to such time that the levels are crossed.
I would imagine, and again, I'm not an expert on the subject, but there must be quite a bit of traffic over the Turks and Caicos, irrespective of what comes to us directly, but also just flying above us to, I don't know, Puerto Rico, Eastern Caribbean. Is that correct?
Directly, right? Why is that? Is because we have a VOR. A VOR. VOR is basically a VHF, omnidirectional range. What this here simply, to break it down, right? When you identify, give an example, a bicycle wheel, right? A bicycle wheel has so many spokes. And you can identify the VOR as a bicycle wheel emitting imaginary signals, which there are 360 signals, right, being emitted from this VOR. On this VOR, these signals are in the form of radials. A radial could be off the Grand Turk VOR as the Alpha 555, right, which is somewhere like the 305 degree radial, right, 306 degree radial, right. And when you identify it, if you're taking off from Grand Turk, right, you may have taking off from Provo in any instance, you may have a clearance to Miami. The clearance itself may be Grand Turk ATC clears American 658 Heavy to Miami Airport via Provo direct Micas Alpha 555 as far.
You can lose our audience, but anyway, so go ahead.
Okay, but what I'm saying is that, it basically gives a respective feeling that, it's not all that technical, right? There's a lot of technical jargon, right? However, when you identify in terms of the overall prospect of it all is that, you're responsible.
You're watching Turks and Caicos Crossroads, a Channel 4 production. My name is Titus de Boer, today in conversation with Mr. Larry Lamard, Garland. Larry, probably because it's a fascinating subject, we just got carried away a little bit with air traffic control, and I hope you forgive me for that.
Sorry.
Let's move on now to business-related matters. You mentioned earlier on that sort of as you were in air traffic control, you also became increasingly interested in accountancy. You did internships in accountancy companies. And gradually the idea developed to one day go into business for yourself. Let's focus on that for a moment. How and when exactly did this idea come up?
Well, that's a good question. I've always focused in terms of being independent, right? In terms of someday wanting to own my business. What I had done was basically prepared myself in terms of the academics and the training aspect of it, developing experience in terms that I could be prepared to take on such a challenge. However, while in the course of some of my studies, I had prepared several business plans, marketing plans for prospective users, which utilizing the fact of a business plan called ADMIRAL Express Limited, I started out as an airline charter company, which I modified it while in Nassau in 1997. I had reviewed it and took the challenge of making a schedule company, right? All this was done through the direct, not just the direct consultation, but through some hands-on work with a chartered accountant out of Nassau at the firm Coopers & Lybrand, the chartered accountancy firm in Nassau. However, on returning home, I evaluated the situation and realized in the cost measures to achieve for such a business, it may have not quite been feasible at the time. However, I focused on an area specifically related to my background where it didn't require such a high startup cost. Such factor realizing that I may be able to identify my goals much more quickly. And through this, I find that coming up with the idea of ADMIRAL Express Limited, it has been associated with the thought of something, well, it's just my thought prospective, right? As I identified it, it was not merely looking in terms of just my selfish gain as such. It's looking in terms of being assistance to other people.
Would it still be though in the airline industry, or what's the new emphasis?
The emphasis I focus on right now is looking at management advisory services to start with the objective of probably, say, leasing one or two other entities in order to enhance certain growth, as well as taking a thought of maybe organizing plans, like maybe, say, developing marketing and business strategies and research reports, which, evidently speaking, could be remunerated to the business as areas of retainership consultancy.
So in general terms, consultancy, management consultancy, which of course then leads on to the next question. Your target market would be, I don't know, local businesses. Have you identified who you'd be targeting?
At this stage of time, I have focused on a few particular clients, whereby these clients would be directly related to the local environment, as well as I have identified prospective clients abroad. They themselves have taken a renewed interest in the project, and based on the factor of being in a market where it's not quite saturated as yet, I take into consideration that, you know, once I start to market, advertise, right, I feel as if there would be a general interest catered from many other sources.
Right. Without asking you to give away trade secrets, the company obviously has been formed. You said it was ADMIRAL Express
Yes.
Limited. At the moment, are you the sole operator, the sole person behind it? Have you got some partners? Not asking you to name partners if you don't want to, but just is it a combination of several people?
At this stage, should I say just prior to this stage, or maybe let's say yesterday and today, right? As I have looked at it, I am currently the director on a corporation, as well as a secretary on a board. However, within the Articles of Association, based on my annual registration fee to the government, right, I have to declare a few further directors in terms of where I have set up the business so far. I've placed certain management key people into place, and at this stage in time, it will be focused merely in terms of certain other aspects of growth. Now, for me, as I somewhat see it, based on my business cards, I have it listed where I'm chairman and CEO, right? However, I do have prospective other persons out there who will be taking active part in the management and other aspects of the business as well that can directly relate in terms of its future growth.
Right. When you first came up with the idea, no doubt you had talked about it with friends and people you worked with, both in tourism, air traffic control. What was their reaction? Did they say, good for you, go for it? Were perhaps some saying, gosh, you know, I could never pull this off? How did friends and colleagues react to your plans?
To be honest with you, right, I think, you know, I know a lot of criticism by people in terms of saying it can't be done, you'll never make it, you know. I think the tendency for people is that they want to achieve, right? However, in terms of achieving, it's a requirement that you somewhat work towards it, right? As you know, we all have dreams. But the most important thing about dreams is that in order to move ahead in life, if we don't dream, we won't have any thought aspiration of where we want to go. So I think what I had evaluated in terms of my dreams, a lot of people thought maybe my dreams were very simple or, you know, in terms of saying not realistic. But I take into consideration the realistic factor of it is that it's only you who can determine what you are all about.
Absolutely, yeah. The company's in place. You are currently also working in tourism, and we're going to talk about tourism in a moment as a separate issue. Where do you see yourself going with your business, let's say in the next 6 to 12 months? You say you've already told me that there are some people in place who have expressed a willingness to work together with you.
Yes.
Give us an idea of where you would like to see it go, let's say in the next 12 months.
Okay, at this stage in time, I'm currently pursuing further aspects of training within professional areas, whereby my business outlook on Admiral Express is basically aimed at putting other members into place, other management personnel as well. But I think at this stage in time, I have declared my annual declaration, right? So therefore, I may be waiting, say, for the next 6 months in determining the other board structure factor, because I think once that can be achieved, when you look at the biannual meeting, right, I think certain other sources will be elected, whereby we can generally look at focusing more attention on where we may be headed from there.
Talked about the reaction of your friends and colleagues. Another aspect I'd like to touch on is, and this is perhaps also in view of advising other young Turks and Caicos Islanders who may want to set up their own businesses, fulfill their dreams, as you said. Dealing with bureaucracy, getting licenses into place, dealing with civil servants. Easy, hard, manageable? What were some of the experiences you had there? And if you had to do it over again, would you maybe approach things differently?
Well, at current, right, what I've identified is that if we want something to be done relative to a business, or maybe even a passport, right, just getting a passport, you may find that you have to wait probably about a week or maybe 2 weeks or something before it can be attained, right? Now, when you analyze something of that nature, business is something of the nature where it's not like you have to wait for tomorrow. When you're in business, you expect things to be done today, right? So I think having a realization factor of what I've gone through in terms of waiting for certain sources in Grand Turk in order to obtain the relative areas, relative tools in order to get things done, I find that there has been some difficulty. Why? It's because Providenciales being the place, the community, the island where most activities are taking place, business-wise, tourism-wise, and of that nature, right? This is where most of the industries are at. Not just industries, but this is where the larger of the population is at. I feel as if it may become much more prevalent for us to look at identifying these key sources of where we depend on in terms of movements, right? Well, there could be, say, some sub-departments placed down here, right, in Providenciales.
As is happening already, slowly but surely.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I think, what you identify is that it will allow a business person to be much more comfortable with the government as well as with himself.
A number of the younger civil servants are, of course, your age group. I'm sure that many of them went to school with you.
Yes.
Do you sometimes find that there is, because they went straight to the civil service and just stayed in the civil service, that there is perhaps a lack of understanding the private sector? Would you say that's correct, or how would you view some of the people who have made careers in the civil service?
Okay, as I've identified, right, there has been some people within the civil service who departed, ventured into the private sector, right? However, if you're in the civil service, there's a tendency of wanting to be relaxed, right? Reason being that it's almost like you have a job for life until you reach retirement stage, right? But I think if you have a strong will, if you have a desire that you want to achieve, that's when you can honestly take that daring step away from where you're at and move on to benefiting yourself. However, it's not an easy situation, right? Believe it or not, it's very rough, right? But overall, you have to, persevere. You have to look in terms of saying, if nothing in life is not worth it, when it's really not worked hard for.
I'd like to move on now to the area of tourism.
Yes.
Because while you have had experience in air traffic control and you're working on your company, on setting up your company, you've also spent now a decade really working in tourism.
Yes, it has been.
In fact, I can remember that the original Ramada Hotel, you worked for them for quite some time.
Yes, I did.
I'd like you to comment for a moment generally of what your view is of what's happened in tourism in the Turks and Caicos from the point of view of somebody who's actually worked in the industry, and maybe share some of your experiences with us, because you have seen so many of the different businesses from the inside. You worked for Ramada, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
You've been with Beaches, with Club Med currently.
Yes.
Give us a little scoop on that.
What I've identified is that the hotel tourism sector of the economy is still in growth, right? However, with certain key personnel who have passed through the system of the tourism industry within the Turks and Caicos, they have left a mark whereby certain factors for us to follow. However, initially, my first job in the hotel industry, Ramada, it was quite beneficial in terms of being a management training to actually focus in terms of being there for other people, right? Being there as a role model to recognizing that, it's not all about the accounting, right? It's not just about all the administration, but you have to recognize that a hotel of that nature, if you want to make it, you have to sweep the floors, you have to wash the glasses, wash the dishes, because, when you look at the sanitary aspect of it, it's important. But not just from the sanitary aspect of it, it's a job, right? So despite the fact that I did it all already, it was basically only there for me to get a sociological and somewhat a psychological perspective of how people operate within that environment.
And perhaps also, as you move on in life, if you've experienced these things and done them yourself,
Yes.
you'll be in a far better position to comment on somebody who either does it well or not.
Directly. Yes.
The within your lifetime, Turks and Caicos have changed dramatically.
Yes.
I'm sure you can remember the quaint, quiet days of your childhood.
Yes.
And today you probably find yourself sometimes traveling down the Leeward Highway, looking at how slowly the traffic is progressing. We've talked about business, we've talked about growth opportunities. I'd like you to now look at the whole picture for a moment as Citizen Larry, shall we say.
Yes.
Okay, your day-to-day environment, increased traffic, vehicles, tourism growing by leaps and bounds. Do you sometimes reminisce about the good old days? Is there sometimes perhaps an inkling of a worry where you say, gosh, where's this all going?
Well, at one point in time, there was a fear, right? There was a tendency whereby I evaluated where, growth actually brought about not just economic prosperity, but it would also bring about certain other factors maybe that may be crime related, right? However, being in Providenciales, I don't see any high significance of that factor, right? But when you begin to evaluate it overall, the fear itself was not just a fear of my life or maybe one or two other people, but it was overall a fear in general, right? But when you begin to look at the overall aspect of life, we have to realize that, what is there to fear but fear itself?
So, on a general note, you're fairly content that we're on the right track and that things will continue to progress.
Directly.
Yeah. This program is watched by a large number of young people.
Yes.
And I'm sure many of them contemplate their careers, look at their future, be it in tourism, be it in the financial services or whatever. You've been out there now for a decade,
yes,
for quite a long time, trying to see what to do with your career, how to get yourself set up with your own company. To the young people who are out there watching this now and having learned a little bit about you and your aspirations, if you had a chance to sit down with them right now and point them in the right direction and perhaps also give them some advice based on your experience, what are some of the key factors you would like to mention? A moment ago we mentioned tourism and you said, don't consider yourself too good to do anything. If
yes,
you need to do the plates and the dishes, well, so be it. That's part of the service industry.
Sure.
What are some of the things you'd want to highlight to them when talking to them?
Well, I've identified that the most important area within life on a whole, the area that you find that to be challenged, you have to love something to really appreciate it, right? If you love something in terms of saying it's just there as a means that it's going to pass away tomorrow, that's not love, right? However, I think in terms of your love has to be not necessarily a devotion just for another person or anything of that nature, but you have to somewhat take concern of yourself. And by doing that, there are people out there who are in very credible places where you have to identify them as being solid leaders, right? Or as leaders, you should identify them as being prospective role models. However, what I would like to say, based on what you've asked me, is that I'm telling everybody it's not a matter of following after your role model to be just like that role model, right? Because you cannot be like anybody else in this world. You can only be like yourself. You can only characterize certain things about people, but evidently speaking, the final analysis is that it's going to come down to you. So I think evaluating the overall prospect, it is a requirement that you focus, right? But remember this, the most important thing is not just about talking, it's about listening, and listening attentively.
And on that note, I've enjoyed listening to you today.
Thank you.
And it was good to have you on Crossroads. Maybe we can talk about your project, your business again, 12 months from now, 6 months from now. You'll give us an update to our viewers. This was another edition of Turks and Caicos Crossroads, today with Larry, Lamard, Garland. My name is Titus DeBoer. We hope to see you very soon again on this program. Thanks for watching.
Good morning. I am Dr. Lamard Garland, a native of the Turks and Caicos Islands, born in Grand Turk, raised in South Caicos. As I come before you today, representing Atlantic International University, I recognize the World Symposium that I am performing in reference to my official outlook pertaining to meeting the eyes of you, the public. As I am a former air traffic controller, I was trained at the Barbados School of Air Traffic Services, now recognized as the Barbados Civil Aviation Training Center. My training orchestrated the areas of aerodrome control, ground control, flight data, coordinator, approach control, area control, and aeronautical information services. The training encompassed various theoretical areas such as aircraft theory, navigation, as well as certain other areas such as radio theory and telecommunications. The scope of my training allowed me to work in South Caicos Air Traffic Control Tower, where I managed the runway, managed an apron that housed the parking of the aircraft. While in South Caicos Tower, I was exposed to the area of aerodrome control, which announced the focus of being able to manage the terminal as well as the other areas as prescribed or as identified. As I am also a former management trainee of Ramada Turquoise Reef Resort and Casino, trained in all areas of the hotel, I have had exposure to the administrative and operational areas identified within the hotel scope of hospitality management. My further training announced the areas of studying with Columbus University in Picayune, Mississippi, where I trained in the areas of the Bachelor of Business Administration, majoring in Hotel, Restaurant, and Tourism, the Master of Science degree, majoring in Aviation Management, the Doctorate degree of Philosophy, majoring in Accounting, also completing the Master's degree of Business Administration, majoring in Finance. This degree, or these degrees, allowed me to transfer credits onto the Chartered Professional Accountancy Program of Canada, which prior to this program, I was enrolled in the Certified General Accounting Program of the Caribbean, as well as the Certified General Accounting Program of Canada. These professional programs also allowed me working area experience in the Association of Chartered Certified Accountancy Program, which my focus now is aimed at becoming a chartered managerial accountant, which, while working with Fortis TCI, which was the former Provo Power Company Limited, which I had worked for, I had been trained under a general manager who is a certified general accountant, as well as working along with the chartered managerial accountants of the organization, whom are CMAs, Chartered Managerial Accountants, which my training allowed me working experience on a contract basis with PPC Limited in the areas of reconciliation, internal audit, preparation of financial statements, as well as inventory and stock control. I have had exposure training as well as work experience with Club Med as working as an assistant administrative personnel manager in the Bahamas, working under the supervision of the regional personnel manager with direct consultation to the regional director of Club Med Bahamas Limited. These areas were defined or are defined as my general exposure to learning about the administrative and operational management aspects of aviation and hotel management, which are the subject areas to which my career aspirations are progressively aimed at pushing to. At this moment, I'm currently enrolled in the postdoctoral degree research program of accounting with Atlantic International University located in the beautiful Honolulu, Hawaii. This program, which I am currently doing very well within, has allowed me the functionality of producing professional subject areas, which I was graded and currently manage the avenue of having a 4.0 average, GPA average. I manufacture with exposure training within my with many accounting professional training program, as I mentioned prior to which I'm talking about now, being the ACCA, the CPA, and the CGA. On the agenda today, we will explore 4 different topical areas to include the challenges I have solved in my life, also professionally, economically, socially, and as Atlantic International University has asked me to describe the avenue of perpetual evolution. We, as can be defined by internet research, the competition against digital-born companies, traditional companies which need to adopt a much different approach to designing and managing enterprise, a model we call perpetual evolution, because it emphasizes continual change to and modular design of business capabilities, as well as the technologies behind them, which, as referred to through the Google search engine, reference McKinsey, as shown in the webpage mckinsey.com. Throughout my life, as we have seen, as we are focused attention towards, I have had many ups and downs. specifically aimed at where my life has pursued many challenges. Challenges such as my health condition. My health condition evolved the channel base of where I had a problem, illness, relating to a ruptured appendix, which I spent 12 days within the Grand Turk Hospital after obtaining an emergency flight from South Caicos, which the time period there created further problems where I developed a pelvic abscess and an abdominal abscess. I was then flown to Nassau, where I underwent another surgery performed at the Princess Margaret Hospital, where I was able to recover and release, where I returned back to South Caicos and recontinued my work with the South Caicos Tower within the Civil Aviation Department. My health condition has created a long frame of emotional setbacks, such as a psychological misunderstanding of my future, which it took a long time for me to recognize the functionality of what my future really had pertained. However, with my desire to become a professional accountant, I have conditionally channeled my interest in working towards that defined goal. Economically, I am not very rich in monetary rewards. However, with the funds that I currently obtain, I have managed to pay for my academic and professional qualifications with training with reputable academic institutions, as well as with professional institutions. Two of the academic institutions being the University College of Cape Breton, which is now known as the University of Cape Breton, as well as the TCI Community College, which is the Turks and Caicos Community College, where I graduated with a diploma in hospitality studies. My diploma in hospitality studies allowed me, while in Nassau, New Providence, as an assistant administrative manager with the Club Med Bahamas Limited, the Club Med Paradise Island Village, I was able to perform conducting a research program with Bahamas Air, their quality control officer and their chief pilot. This project involved me providing area focus on the CFM International jet engine, which is an engine operated on their Boeing 737-200 series jet. The exposure to this training was manipulated through my initial work experience with Turks Air Flamingo Air Services, which Flamingo Air Services was an airline charter company, which allowed me to operate on working on Continental and Lycoming engines. These engines were placed upon Piper Aztec and Piper Seneca aircraft. The idea of the aircraft was that I had to perform overnight work in which I changed the motor oil of the aircraft. I changed the brake pads. I removed the cowling flaps and also worked under the chief mechanic in other areas under supervision. The Lycoming engine operates a TBO, which is the time before overhaul, being that the time before the engine expires and needs to be refurbished is 2,000 hours, while the Continental engine is 1,800 hours, which the CFM International jet aircraft requires checks upon this aircraft, being that of jet affiliated, which is the A check, the B check, the C check, the D check, and the Q check, which takes the aircraft to a facility where the airframe of the aircraft is completely overhauled, which checks on the aircraft is made upon searching for any structural damages, and which, if found, are repaired in that respect. Socially, I am a young man with extracurricular activities, such as with the likeness of dancing, weightlifting, playing basketball, as well as other such areas such as walking, exercising, keeping my body physically fit. I love women, the opposite sex. However, the respect for young ladies, specifically one who I channel to love and appreciate, being Kavisha Simmons, a lady who currently works with my company as a management trainee. I have allowed myself the functionality of learning about her, in that she carries a weight of knowledge that parts the understanding of me wanting to learn more about her. She is also a student at this stage in time of the Montreal Basin High School, registered also with the Atlantic International University in their bachelor's degree of business administration program. Socially, my exposure to life is the general aim of wanting to understand more on a basis of interlinking with people who have wide experience and knowledge that I can part from. As we move on to the introduction, we see that in a moment for as to recognize that our firm belief in God satisfies our understanding of love, thus knowing that Jesus Christ died for our sins, and Him dying for our sins, He has made a way, He has paved the way for us to venture into the knowledge of knowing that we can live with Him forever, as well as we can live forever in His kingdom. The ideal aspect of Christ's death for our sins is the functionality of wanting to know that He cares about us. He cares about all of us. However, we must recognize that our understanding of His love for us is meaningful in that we have to identify our general focus of wanting to come to Him, confessing our sins, and becoming grateful enough to recognize that He will forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. In the general outlook of Dr. Lamard Garland, myself, I am outlaid of the avenue of recognizing that my functionality of being able to recognize the general area of my life is the focus of you recognizing the areas of your life. My presentation to you today on this area of general focus towards engineering your focus, your energy towards being like me, per se, is this functionality of being like other people also, like myself, and with entrepreneurialistic ideas and functions, focus of wanting to recognize the general areas in terms of which you and I have received and what we can transpire the function of learning more. As we go on further, you may read within the introduction, which I give you the objective of being able to see it for what it really is at this moment. I will provide to you a business reference later on within the general area of myself. I take a time to pause after you read the introduction and go on to the next step. As I was in church today, the Methodist minister announced to me that these scripture sayings of that, but when the Pharisees had heard that he had got Sadducees to silence, they were gathered together. Then one of them, which was a lawyer, asked for him a question, tempting him and saying, Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy might, and with all thy soul and with all thy mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like unto it, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. This scripture lesson is taken from Matthew chapter 22, verse 34 to 39. Topic 1. The love for our Lord. It is recognized also that the way to get started is to quit talking and start doing, which is the word of Walt Disney. In summary, we can outlay the functionality of recognizing that it is important to realize the love of our God, the love that shares the monumental understanding of us recognizing each other and working together. I give a pause statement there for you to review the summary. I provide here a business reference from which you'll see within a page following this item presentation. You'll also see another recommendation from my former job outlining from the Federal Aviation Administration Human Resource Manager. Atlantic International University, my affiliate, has a wide range of subject areas, from the certificate to the postdoctoral degree programs. Atlantic International University is also in the top 100 of the United States universities located in North America, while also within the top 1,000 ranking of world universities located in the world. As we look at this photo, we can see Jay-Z, a rap superstar. We can see Oprah Winfrey, a talk show host. We can see Bill Gates. Bill Gates is actually a multi-billionaire, an entrepreneur, which I try to be like. Emulating these people outlays the functionality of me realizing that my aspirations are deeply situated in that I am trying to be similar to being just like them. Atlantic University logo is an atlas of the universities of the world. Thank you for allowing me to express my thought and aspirations of my personal well-being. This is Larry Lamard Garland. Thank you.